All right, we'll go ahead and get the party started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session on crushing the imposter within. We are so excited to be closing out day one, and we are hopeful that you spent the day immersed in all the content, the experiences, and the tools that our incredible speakers have shared with you today. By the end of this session, you will leave empowered with the tools necessary to overcome self-doubt. My name is Ebony Lawrence, and I will be presenting this session alongside Yolanda Larner. For those who might find it helpful, I'll give you a brief description of myself. I'm a Black woman in my mid-40s. I'm sporting a blue tee that reads, "I am Black history," and my hair is pulled up into a kinky curly bun. Yolanda is also a Black woman in her late 30s. She's wearing a black polo shirt and rocking crochet twisted braids.
Hi, everyone. So again, welcome to our course on crushing the imposter syndrome. Just so we're all on the same page, we're going to run through our course overview and see what we have lined up today. So we're going to kick things off with defining the imposter syndrome. So what is it exactly? Where did it come from? And how does it show up in different people? The basic knowledge is really going to help us spot it and tackle it head on. Moving on, we'll talk about how to recognize imposter syndrome. What are those telltale signs and how does it differ from just regular self-doubt? Spotting the syndrome in ourselves is really the first step on the road to overcoming it. Up next, we're on to addressing and overcoming imposter syndrome. We'll share some practical strategies for taking on those imposter's thoughts, using self-awareness and a good dose of positivity. We're giving you the tools to break free from that imposter cycle. Then we'll be touching on how to maintain progress and prevent relapses. It's just like going to the gym or starting a new diet. Keeping up the good work can sometimes be tougher than starting out. We're going to chat about strategies for sustaining your progress, dealing with potential backslides, and that super important role of self-care. Finally, we'll dive into an interactive session in QA. This will be a hands-on part of the course, so be prepared. We're going to work together to spot and reframe those imposter thoughts. After that, we'll open up the floor for questions or discussions that you want to have. So it's going to be a really great chance to talk some of those things out. So that's the game plan, and we're excited. So let's get started.
So again, my name is Ebony Lawrence, and I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Black and L&D. I'm also an ID with Amazon Web Service, where I currently support the Global Services Employee Experience team. I spend the majority of my time creating amazing content specific to developing associates to walk and live the Amazon culture and our leadership principles. Imposter syndrome is very, very real for me because I took the non-academic route to the field of talent development, as my background is deeply rooted in public health and community health education. After almost a decade working in talent development in corporate America, management consulting, and higher education spaces, I really still felt as though I wasn't respected as an industry professional. So about 3 years ago, I obtained the CPTD certification through ATD. So basically, I'm a certified professional in talent development. For me, that was a validation that I belonged in the field, and it spoke directly to my inner imposter. We'll spend some time today reflecting on how we've made choices based solely on that inner doubt, that critic, and the pressure we place on ourselves. But for now, I'll turn it over to my amazing co-facilitator to introduce herself.
Hi, so I'm Yolanda Larner. I am an ISD manager at a company called LHT Learning. Right now, I manage the instructional designers as we provide training solutions and learning solutions that for other companies. So we are sort of the people that you outsource your training to. I create training as well. I create learning content, so I still get my hands in the mix when I have a chance. And I love to make sure that we're always following our core mission in terms of the talent development as we're planning out what we're going to create for our different clients. I also took the non-academic route to talent development. I actually started in a call center. So I never thought I never thought I was going to get out of the call center, but I showed an interest in training, and I actually went through CTT Plus, as some of you might be familiar with, and I did a boot camp, and that got me on the road to training. I actually, in my academic life, took a different route for my education as well. So I focus mainly on business information systems because I love technology. So as you can see, not everyone follows the straight way when going through, when becoming in talent development. I also hold a CPTD, but it also took me a long time to get that CPTD because I didn't feel like I knew enough to obtain it. I finally got it though, and I passed it on my first try, and that was really, really validating for me. And just like Ebony, I really did feel like I belonged. So once again, we're going to spend some time talking about that imposter syndrome and what causes you to feel like me, where you're not ready to take that next step in your career, and figuring out how we are going to overcome that. So what I want you to do next is take a look at what you see on the screen here, and I'll give you just a minute and determine if it applies to you. And I see everyone's kind of introducing themselves in the chat, so thank you for that. So after reviewing each item listed, and you can say in the chat if it's true or not, did one or more apply to you? If one or more applied to you, then you might suffer from imposter syndrome. So of course, in this session, you'll learn to recognize that imposter syndrome and how it can hold you back. And then you'll learn some simple yet effective techniques to overcome it. See a lot of yeses there.
Lots of yeses. All right. So imposter syndrome is also known as imposter phenomenon or fraud syndrome. Okay. It's when you feel deep down that you're not as good as people think you are. It's this internal battle where you doubt your own abilities and worry that others will discover you're a total fraud, even though you're actually achieved a lot. It's all about questioning yourself and your accomplishments, and it can really mess with your head. So back in 1978, two brilliant doctors, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes, first gave a name to this syndrome. They realized that it's something that a lot of high achievers go through, but it often flies under the radar because people don't really talk about it. These high achievers tend to downplay their own successes. They call it luck, good timing, or simply giving the credit to somebody else. Imposter syndrome can show up in different ways for different people. Some folks feel like complete frauds, thinking that they're fooling everyone around them. Others struggle to see their own abilities and consistently doubt themselves. Basically, if you've got imposter syndrome, you feel like you're not smart enough, not capable enough, and not creative enough to achieve success. It's like you can't fully recognize your own talents because you're always thinking, I'm not good enough. It's a never-ending cycle of feeling incompetent and questioning everything you do. Okay. People with imposter syndrome think that their success is totally undeserved. They believe it's all a fluke, a stroke of luck, or, not because they actually worked hard or have the right qualifications. They're constantly afraid that someone will expose them for the fraud they believe themselves to be. This is a tough pill to swallow, right? So you're out doing your thing, accomplishing big things, big stuff, but deep down you're convinced that you're fooling everyone. You're an actor in your own life, putting on a show and hoping no one realizes you're just pretending. But that fear of being found out can be very, very overwhelming.
So who can suffer from imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome isn't actually picky. It really doesn't matter who you are. It can affect anyone, anywhere, at any time. You could be a surgeon holding someone's life in your hands, a CEO making $1 million decisions, or just an intern starting to climb that corporate ladder. You could be still wrestling with those feelings. Even famous actors under the public eye or renowned authors are constantly trying to top their last bestseller, aren't safe from it. So the key thing to remember here is that nobody is off limits when it comes to imposter syndrome. Doesn't matter how successful we are, how skilled we are, or what type of pedestal society puts us on. We can all be blindsided by these nagging feelings of self-doubt and not being good enough. The fact is, it's so universal that it can hit anyone, anywhere, shows that it's not a personal failing. Just a common thing a lot of us go through. But the good news is it's something we can definitely tackle and keep under control. And then we have some quotes on the side, and you can see we have one from Michelle Obama who says, "I still have a little imposter syndrome. Doesn't go away. That feeling you shouldn't take me seriously. What do I know? I share that with you because we all have doubts in our abilities and our power and about our power and what that power is." So, the continue on that line of thought, I just want to share a little story about myself. I had imposter syndrome for years, and it's still something that I am constantly working on, working to overcome. And it has actually cost me in some ways over the years by not feeling like I'm qualified enough. For example, when I had roles when I became a contractor, I was a contract trainer for a while, and I wanted to move into instructional design, but because I didn't have that official instructional design knowledge, I felt like I wasn't prepared, even though I had worked on instructional design items for quite a while. So it was really difficult for me to get jobs. And then when I did get jobs that I felt like I could do, I didn't negotiate for pay. I didn't negotiate for pay because I felt like I was lucky to even get what they were offering me just to begin with. I will say that that is something that I have overcome. It does take a lot of hard work to overcome those feelings, but just know if you've ever felt that before, you're not the only one. Ebony also has a story to share.
See lots of praises in the chat and
Hmm.
emotions coming up. Thank y'all for that support. So I want to share a personal experience where imposter syndrome affected me personally. About 10 years ago, I began working as a volunteer for a higher education accreditor. Okay. My role was to serve on teams that conducted peer reviews of colleges and universities seeking to achieve or renew accreditation of their academic programs, right? So during site visits, I felt very confident, right? I felt capable of performing my assigned duties. I was a subject matter expert. I knew how to conduct faculty interviews. I was comfortable reviewing curriculum, right? Looking at course content, the learning management systems, and reviewing textbooks. I mean, I had even authored a textbook at that point, right? But however, after the visits ended, my fears, my self-doubt, and my imposter thoughts would creep in. The teams were made up of very accomplished individuals, doctors, lawyers, college administrators, registrars, provosts, and even some college presidents were in attendance. Many who'd been retired long as I'd ever been alive, right? So once the workday wrapped up, we returned to our hotel rooms and get changed for dinner. We have team dinners. So while everyone else on the team was relaxing and preparing for a casual night out, I would become very anxious. My palms would start sweating, my heart rate would increase, my blood pressure would rise. And why, you might ask? Well, the team dinners were always held at very upscale and fancy restaurants, often places I wouldn't typically go to on my own dime. Okay. The menus listed market prices for food as opposed to the actual costs. And I generally call my hubby or a friend prior to heading out for a pep talk, only to be dismissed with, "Girl, go out, enjoy that free meal, and stop stressing." But for me, it was agonizing. Okay. So picture yourself sitting in a restaurant with a group of well-educated, well-traveled individuals who are quite different from you. They didn't have the same upbringing or life experiences, and most were much older than me. I was expected to engage in dinner conversations that revolved around spring break trips to Italy and family vacations in Europe and Switzerland, right? Places I'd never been before. And the worst part, I never knew when it was my turn to choose the wine for the table. Instant imposter syndrome. I had this paralyzing fear of making an unpopular selection. I mean, let's be serious. We drink Stella Rosa in my house. I would literally play a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, right? Before rattling off some random wine selection. And then I would quietly whisper to the waiter because I couldn't pronounce half of the words, right? I mean, I laugh at myself now, but it was an extremely uncomfortable situation for me. And it's one that persisted for many, many years. I remember one particular dinner, I was trying to imitate the guy next to me, because he was swirling his wine glass, like swirling it around. And I didn't know why he was doing it, but it looked like something I needed to be doing before I started drinking my wine. So I went for it. Y'all, I spilled the wine all over my arm. I mean, it was horrible, embarrassing, right? Now, eventually, I did have the courage to confide in that group and fess up that I knew absolutely nothing about wine. And they were generally very kind humans, and I had no reason to doubt them, right? But I did. It was my inner critic. Of course, once I fessed up, they asked why I hadn't spoken up earlier. And because in their eyes, they were being intentional about including me and ensuring my voice was heard. But from my seat, it was torture. So then they began flooding my inbox with suggestions for wine clubs to join and courses to take, which I really appreciated. But it took me years to overcome that hurdle. And it had a significant impact on my mental health. I mean, I still don't know what tannin is, but I know that I don't like wines that have a lot of it in it. Okay. But in the end, recognizing that this is a form of imposter syndrome was the first step for me to deal with it.
So, when imposter syndrome starts messing with your head, as you can see, it can lead to some real tough stuff. It's like this annoying voice telling you in your head that you're not good enough, and you end up working yourself to the bone just to prove it wrong. And that's a way to get burnt out really, really quickly. Your brain is constantly overreacting, feeling like you're not doing good enough, and you just need to go just a little bit further just to prove everybody wrong. That extra stress and anxiety that hit to your self-confidence, it can get real heavy. And if left unchecked, it can pull you down. And sometimes it can lead to things really serious, just like depression. But it doesn't stop messing with your mind. It really starts creeping on how you perform at work, how you interact with your colleagues, even how you interact with your family and friends. It's not just a personal mind monster, it affects your professional life too.
So recognizing imposter syndrome is the very first step to dealing with it. Okay, let's dive into some signs that can help you figure out if you're experiencing it. One of the big ones is feeling like a total fake. So pretending to be competent and always worried about being exposed as a fraud. No matter how many achievements or qualifications you have, deep down, you're terrified of someone finding out that you're not as great as they think you are. Another sign is attributing your success to luck or some other fluke instead of acknowledging it as an outcome of your own skills and efforts. Instead of giving yourself credit for your hard work, you convince yourself it's all because of some external factor. Okay. Let's not forget about downplaying yourself or dismissing your own expertise. Even with a ton of knowledge and experience, you still underestimate yourself and think you're not really contributing much. One huge misconception: some people think that only insecure folks have it, okay? But that's not true at all. Imposter syndrome can affect anybody, regardless of how confident they may seem on the outside. Y'all heard that saying, fake it till you make it, right? Well, imposter syndrome will have you thinking that your every move is an act. You're doubting your abilities, even when there's clear evidence that you're actually killing it. In my experience, it hasn't always been a bad thing. Yeah, it can certainly hold you back sometimes, right? But sometimes it can actually push you to work harder and strive for more. I want to share the phases of the imposter cycle with you. It's this ongoing loop that imposter syndrome puts you through. Okay, so first, there's the effort phase. This is when where you're constantly over preparing, overworking because you don't want to be, found out, right? You're terrified of being called out. The next phase comes success. So here you actually see your achievements as a result of your hard work and not just luck or innate talent. You kind of celebrate yourself a little bit, right? But then something happens to trigger the next phase: denial. You start discrediting your own success, dismissing it, and feeling unvalidated and incapable of actually accomplishing the win. And guess where that leads you? To the discount phase, where you belittle your own success and end up feeling like you have to work even harder just to prove your worth. Okay. The bottom line is this: recognizing that you might be dealing with imposter syndrome is the first step to overcome it. If these signs resonate with you, just know that you are not alone. There are strategies and ways to tackle these feelings and come out stronger on the other side.
So now let's dive into a story from the Harvard Business Review that really brings this whole imposter syndrome thing to life. It's a case study by Manfred F.R. Keats de Vries called The Dangers of Feeling Like a Fake. So there's this guy, let's call him Tobin Holmes. He's super smart, like an Oxford graduate smart, and he's moving up the ladder at a telecom company. You think he's got it made, right? He's doing everything he's supposed to. But here's the thing, when he lands that big senior management job, he's freaked out that he's not up for it. I'm sure a lot of you have felt that way. Tobin has this nagging thought that he's a fraud and he's going to get found out at any second. And just isn't some passive worry. It really gets to him. He starts acting out, getting in a real messy situation in his personal life, like getting in a major car crash because of an alcohol binge. At his job, Tobin's fear of being found out makes it tough for him to concentrate or make decisions. So he's constantly worrying that his boss, the other big shots, will realize they messed up by promoting him. So here's where it gets kind of interesting. Tobin can't handle the stress, so he bails on his job and takes a lower position at another company. But the thing is, he's really talented. So before long, he's asked to take on another big role. But those doubts start to kick in again, and he's worried of being revealed as a fraud. So he ducks out less than a year. Can you see the pattern here? He's got a severe case of imposter syndrome, and it's messing with his career big time. So even though he's got talent and potential, he's convinced he's a fraud and keeps derailing his progress. Eventually, people stop promoting Tobin because they see his resume and he looks like he's a job hopper who hasn't really accomplished things. Tobin's story is a reminder that anyone can suffer from imposter syndrome, no matter how successful they appear to be. It just underlines how important it is for us to recognize and tackle imposter syndrome head on.
It's a great story.
So we've all had those moments, right? Either feeling something like in Ebony's story or feeling something like in Tobin's story. You're tackling something new, or maybe something at work is really pushing your boundaries. So naturally, you start to wonder, can I really do this? That's what we call self-doubt. That's a part of life, and it's normal to have these moments of questioning. But here's where things take a twist. Imposter syndrome isn't just your run-of-the-mill self-doubt. It's this constant feeling that you're a phony, even when there's plenty of proof that you're not. If you've got imposter syndrome, you're always on the edge, thinking you've tricked everyone about your abilities, and it's just a matter of time before they see through you. The difference here is that self-doubt comes and goes depending on what you're dealing with. But imposter syndrome, that's a nonstop roller coaster of doubting yourself. You could be doing amazing things and still feel like you're not up to the task. That success you achieve doesn't really feel real, and it's as if you're always one step away from being found out. Getting the difference between self-doubt and imposter syndrome is super important because it can help you spot when someone or yourself might be close to battling imposter syndrome. And remember, it's not a weakness to ask for help when you need it. In fact, it makes us stronger. And just a final note, remember, self-doubt isn't always a sign of imposter syndrome. It really only becomes imposter syndrome when that doubt sticks around, even when you're clearly doing good at what you do. It's always on your mind, messing with your mental health and work, and then it's time to address it head on.
So now that we understand what it is and how it shows up in us, let's discuss how to get ahead of it. Okay. The first thing you got to do is get to know yourself better. It's all about developing some serious self-awareness. Start recognizing and being conscious of when those sneaky imposter thoughts creep up. How often do you feel like you're faking it? Do you catch yourself brushing off and downplaying your accomplishments, right? Once you recognize and got those thoughts isolated, it's time for some self-acceptance. It's time to be real with yourself and embrace who you are. Listen, nobody's perfect. We all have our strengths and we all have our areas in which we could stand to improve. That doesn't make you a fraud. It's totally okay to make mistakes, and it's definitely normal to have areas where you can improve. But at the same time, give yourself some credit for what you're good at and the progress you've made along the way. Give yourself some grace. Keep in mind that overcoming imposter syndrome isn't going to happen overnight. It takes time, practice, and some serious patience. It's a journey. But with a little self-awareness, some self-acceptance, and the right techniques in your back pocket, you can manage those imposter feelings and start believing in your worth and your abilities. Okay, so next, I want to dive into some strategies for overcoming it. Okay, so let's spend some time really talking strategy with y'all. Okay, so the how. I like to start with drawing attention to those negative thoughts that flood our brains. Seriously, write them down. By recording them, you can start spotting patterns and figuring out where they're coming from. For example, you might notice that you're always comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you come up short. Once you figured out that these are triggers, you can start tackling them head on. Okay, record their frequency. How often do they arise? In what situations are they more prominent? Do they tend to creep up around certain people or during certain meetings? Track them and look for commonalities and triggers. Okay, next, it's time to start challenging those negative thoughts. And you've got a few ways to do this. One approach that has been pretty clutch for me is to reframe your thoughts. Okay, so think factually. Take each negative assumption and hit it with an undeniable fact about your amazing abilities or your accomplishments. So instead of shrugging off your success, recognize the hard work you put into it. Give yourself a pat on the back and admit that you deserve it. Okay. Another approach, and what I call my secret weapon, are positive affirmations. Constantly remind yourself of how capable you are and all the awesome things you've accomplished. Okay. Whip that bad boy out whenever you're feeling insecure. Right. Remind yourself that you're awesome and totally capable. Write it on a sticky note. Put them in your car, on your bathroom mirror, your refrigerator door, in your gym bag, right? Fill your own cup. Okay. Another great strategy is to simply talk it out. Imposter syndrome can make you feel isolated and alone, but you're not. Okay. It's important to have an open conversation with someone that you trust. Sharing what you're going through can help validate your feelings and give you a fresh perspective. Trust me, talking it out works wonders. With this one, though, it's imperative that you remain conscious of who you allow to share your space. Be intentional about identifying a safe source to reach out to when you need encouragement. Don't seek an ally on someone who you already know will make the situation worse. Okay? So take out your phones, look at your call history, figure out who makes that cut. If there's no one saved in your current address book, tap into this network and find someone. Iron sharpens iron. Seeking feedback can always be a difficult one to tackle. I say this because many of us are afraid of it. We run from it. Okay. The word feedback itself can be a bit intimidating and put us on defense. But very often, other people often have a more balanced view of our abilities than we do. So go out and ask for feedback. Okay. It can either give you practice challenging those imposter thoughts or give you some concrete areas to focus on for improvement. You will be amazed at what you learn about yourself. Okay. Again, be mindful and strategic of the source of your feedback. Okay. The next one here is common, and I believe it's something that is instilled in us during childhood. Okay. Comparing yourself to others. When I was growing up, it seemed like everywhere I turned, I was forced into comparison with someone or something. Okay. Think back to elementary school, where we were judged based on making good grades, right? There were award ceremonies for honor roll and principals lists. There were awards for perfect attendance and physical fitness. I mean, really, who is still running a shuttle run as an adult? Anybody? Is anybody competing for the most pull-ups or the fastest mile time? Now, I'm sure I could use a few sit-ups to get these abs right. But in all honesty, comparisons just create unfair advantages for most of us because the playing fields are not always equal. When it comes down to it, everyone's got their own areas of strengths, skills, and abilities. Comparison is unfair because it's situational when you put it into context. Instead of wasting your energy and comparing yourself to others, focus on your own journey and what makes you unique. You're on your own path and you hold the power to create your own amazing story. Okay. We will wrap up this section with my favorite strategy, listing your success. So, how to toot your own horn, right? So, make it a habit to write them down. Keep what I call a success journal and add to it whenever you accomplish something or you receive positive feedback. No matter how big or small, okay, write it down. Let's say you're in a meeting where you normally sit back and listen. You normally hide behind your fabulous Zoom background and coast through. But today, you have the courage to come off of mute and add your 2 cents. We're celebrating, right? Small wins, okay? You attend a company dinner and weren't able to figure out the dinner fork from the salad fork. Instead of sitting there in utter confusion, you enjoy your meal. Hey, that's when to celebrate, right? You didn't stress that. This list that you're creating will serve as your concrete evidence that your achievements are not just accidents, okay? They're the result of your hard work and incredible talent. With this success journal, when in doubt, you'll have a running list of wins to remind yourself of how amazing you are and the impact you have on those around you, okay? I'm sure there are so many other strategies out there that you'll find have helped you and can help others. So be sure to pay it forward, okay? My personal sticky note reads this. You are competent, you are capable, and you absolutely deserve all the success that comes your way, all right? What will your sticky note say after today? So now we'd like to complete a quick exercise to put what we've learned to practice, okay? I'd like you to think about a recent achievement, all right? Let's pick 2 because y'all are rock stars. Jot them down, okay? Now, under those wins, jot down any negative thoughts you had about them at the time in which they occurred, all right? So pick 2 recent achievements, write them down. And then underneath the wins, jot down any negative thoughts that you had about them at the time they occurred. Okay. So we want to reflect on this. How did your inner critic, that imposter, try to sabotage that moment? Okay. Here's my challenge for you. Try to reframe those thoughts positively. How could you return to that moment and encourage yourself that you truly earned that W? Take a few minutes to complete that exercise, and then we'll have a few of you, if you'd like, to share your experiences.
And you can also put them in the chat if you want to. And while you all are thinking about your achievements and those negative thoughts and reframing them, I'll go ahead and share something recent for me. So I was actually laid off in November, and it was just so we're going in a different direction, which of course I'm sure you all know is a little bit deflating because it's not necessarily anything you did, but maybe they just didn't want that particular L&D department anymore or something like that. So I came across a role. They reached out to me for a contract role, and I've done contracting before, so it was okay because any money is kind of good money at that point. And they asked me how much I wanted to make. And so I was a little bit nervous about telling them how much I wanted to make because, again, that imposter syndrome still kind of creeps up every once in a while. And so I thought about it and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. And so I went ahead despite my negative thoughts because I'm thinking, well, you know, I've done this before. It's an instructional design job. I've been doing this for 12, 13 years. I might as well just get that confidence and ask for what I want. Well, they said, okay, well, we're not sure if we can give it to you. So naturally, I felt a little bit deflated again. And I said, well, okay, I'll just, you know, hold out. And if you call me back, that's great. And I continue my job search. So normally, I don't know how many of you are contractors, but normally when you get that, I don't know, you know, that's usually when you never hear from them again. You kind of get ghosted. And that's sort of that when you ask for more money. And so a few weeks later, however, I got a call And he said, "Hey, you know what? We decided we're gonna go ahead and give you that amount. The client's okay with it." And so I felt really happy about that because I really stuck to my guns. And even though I had those negative thoughts at first, I started thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, I think I deserve this because I worked hard all these years. And so I went ahead and I did it, and I actually got what I asked for. And in fact, even though it's a contract role, I recently got hired on as a permanent full time role. So positive and good things can happen.
Got that right. You deserve
Yeah.
it all.
All right. Does anyone want to share in the chat, or if you have the little emoji to raise your hand? I think our producer might be able to take you off of mute and bring you on to tell your story. And then again, if you don't feel comfortable coming off of mute and going on stage, then you can go ahead and share in your chat. Okay, looks like we have someone. If you could go ahead and tell us your name and share your story.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiedra. Mine actually happened today, maybe 2 or 3 hours ago, actually. So I just so happened to find how you could like check how many people was in your session. And I was like, well, I never even thought about to ask how many people was in my session. So let me see, how many people was in my session in comparison to, others. And then as I found myself going down the rabbit hole, I was just like, that's not even healthy. Like, go back, read all of your comments, read the impact that you made, and be confident in that. You don't need numbers to validate you. Like, yes, numbers are important, but numbers don't determine who you actually are and how you actually showed up. So, what I really did, what I went back to do was just read. I went through reading all the chats, all the messages that people sent me. And I was like, that was the job. Like, that was the assignment. And I rested in that and I journaled about it. I prayed and praised God for it. And I'm good now.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And as a person who started off as a trainer, I have found that though it doesn't matter how many people are in my session, if I touch those people with anything, any encouragement, anything that they learned from the session, like you said, that's my truth right there. That I did what I came to do, and I was successful at it. Okay, we have one more person. You can go ahead and tell us your name and share.
Is it me? Can you
Is
hear
it
me?
yeah, Deborah? It's you.
Oh, okay. I didn't know who she was talking to. And I was like, that's my face. Okay, so Deborah Harris, and I was invited to speak at the L&D Leaders event here in Chicago a few weeks ago. And I was so surprised that I was selected. I went down this entire fact finding mission of, are they a legitimate organization holding this conference? Let me see if there have been any past, events and conferences that took place, and what did they look like, and how did they select the speakers? And I couldn't believe that they chose me, right? Not only to moderate, but moderate 2 panels. And then to Yolanda, your point of being laid off, I was laid off in March. So when they finally sent me the link to the event and I saw my face and my name, guess who else's face and name I saw? My former boss who laid me off.
Wow.
Wow.
And I went from imposter syndrome to, oh, you're in the same room with her. And it changed how I approached and embraced the experience. But then in the hotel room when I got there, and because I was scheduled for day 2, I wanted to get there early, day one, to see how everybody else was moderating, what their approach was. And I was taking feverish notes of how I needed to adjust what I had already planned, right, to what had been done before me. And then I was up till like 3 a.m, just nervous, like a nervous wreck of how I was going to show up that day. And thank goodness I brought my mom, and she gave me a pep talk. And she's like, no, you do you. You show up as you, and they will love you because that's why you're here. I'm going to cry. I just want to say thank you for this. Thank you for this platform. And I showed up and showed out as myself. And that was a reward in and of itself.
Thank you for sharing. And just as a note, just like your mom, I'm proud of you.
I am too. Oh, we're all gonna be crying in here.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So we have 5 minutes left, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Ebony, I'll let you take over.
All right. So the strategies that we discussed so far are essential for overcoming imposter syndrome, but it's equally important to maintain this progress, right? So regular practice is crucial. Each time you catch yourself in a pattern of imposter thoughts, challenge them and remind yourself of your achievements. Keep using these strategies and they will become second nature to you. Okay. Feedback should be regular, right? Ask for it, make sure it's continual. Okay. Hopefully by now I've made an imprint in your head to celebrate your achievements. Whether it's a small win or a major accomplishment, take the time to acknowledge and celebrate. This can help reinforce positive feelings about your abilities and counteract those imposter thoughts. Try to pull out your efforts and avoid team speak. Okay, so as you celebrate your contributions, make sure you celebrate as an individual. All right, there is a time and a place for team celebrations, but this time needs to be dedicated to you. Okay. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate imposter syndrome overnight. It's about managing it better over time and minimizing its impact on your life. All right.
So dealing with imposter syndrome isn't just about keeping your thoughts in check. There's a lot to it. Part of that fight is about taking care of your body and your feelings. So living healthy can really boost your emotional strength. So try to find time for exercise, keep your meals balanced, get enough sleep, all those things your doctors tell you to do that we all don't do. They really can help. Another big piece of the puzzle is being kind to yourself. I know for me, I am really, really hard on myself, and I try to meet expectations that I set for myself that are like extremely high. So cut yourself some slack, which I work on, and set goals that challenge you but are reachable. Remember those SMART goals. And remember, it's okay to say no and to set boundaries. Just to piggyback off Ebony, it's okay to say no and to set boundaries. I feel like that needs to be said a second time. A great way to prevent falling back into imposter thoughts is to have an action plan. So start thinking about situations or triggers that make you feel like an imposter and then work out some strategies to handle them. And just remember, your action plan is not set in stone. It should evolve as you learn and grow. It's just a tool to help guide you whenever you feel like those imposter thoughts are sneaking up. So to wrap things up, remember, dealing with imposter syndrome is a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's about learning more about yourself, improving yourself, giving yourself the love you deserve. Remember, it's okay to have feelings of self-doubt. We all do. But with these strategies and a supportive network, you can beat imposter syndrome and let your true self shine.
For sure. All right. We want to spend some time in Q&A, but we only have a minute left. So I'm going to go to our last slide and show our contact information. You want to cover some resources real quick, Yolanda? I'm sorry. Resources?
Yes. And I'll put the answer to the question in the chat box, I think, if I can do that. But here are some resources. We have the Imposter Syndrome Workbook and Overcoming the Imposter, Silence Your Inner Critic and Lead with Confidence. So we have by Athena Danilo and Chris Kelso, and then the Imposter Cure by Jessamy Hibbard. And then to find some quick information, you can go to the Imposter Syndrome Institute. There is a whole website that has resources and information about the imposter syndrome, which also might answer the question in QA as well. And then we also have from the APA, the American Psychological Association, information on imposter syndrome there as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So before we close, we want to thank you guys for joining us today. More importantly, for supporting the Learning Exchange. We so appreciate you. Check your inboxes on Monday for our post-event survey. Your feedback is critical, as that will be used to promote and celebrate the success of this event, as well as guide and direct us as we plan for future events, okay? We will have a drawing once the survey closes and are giving away 2 $50 prizes. So check your spam folder just in case it goes there. And that's all we have. Thank y'all for joining us. I hope it was something that was useful, something you can apply pretty much immediately in your lives, both professionally and personally.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining.